Welcome to How Can I Keep From Singing, a podcast that explores the power of singing together. This ancient art form is our birthright, and we talk with folks who are both teaching, leading, and thinking about singing together. My name is Stuart Stotts, and I'm coming to you from rural Wisconsin. My guest today is Mike Ross. Mike has been the artistic director of Madison Youth Choirs since 2003. Before that, he was the choir director at Madison West High School. Before that, he was a student at UW-Madison. Before that, he was even younger. And before that, he was born in the Milwaukee area.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
It's such a pleasure to do this. Why don't you give us, first of all, a little bit of an outline of what the Madison Youth Choir is and
Sure.
how it's grown. I know it's grown tremendously in the last 20 years.
So Madison Youth Choirs is an organization that was formed in 2003 because of the merger between two other organizations, the Madison Children's Choir that was formed in the mid-'80s and the Madison Boy Choir, which was formed in 1971. And we are two organizations that merged. We serve kids aged 7 through 18 in a myriad of ways. They come to us for regular rehearsals on Sundays. Before COVID, we had choirs in elementary schools. We had an intergenerational choir at Capitol Lakes, but we do a lot of other community programming. And we exist to help kids become what one of our conductors coined a term years ago, expert noticers. Kids, in our case, use the lens of choral music, because that's the world we're in, to think about and interrogate their world and become more empathetic and thoughtful. And that means a lot of different things. It can be musical things, it can be non-musical things, but that's how we exist as an organization. We are a somewhat large organization. I used to say we were a small children's choir, but we're really not anymore. We see about 460 kids in our core program, and then many more, lots of different ways. And we've grown a lot as an organization. In fact, we live now in this building called My Arts, which we and Children's Theater of Madison raised $35 million to build, and it's our home, and it's a home for other amazing arts groups in the community. So that's sort of why we exist. We do that work of helping kids to become expert noticers in lots of different ways, but that's sort of who we are, right? We're a typical children's choir in a lot of ways, but I would say that focus on thinking is a different focus. We perform, and we certainly care that our kids perform at a level that we care about those details, but we are not a performance-focused organization. We are a process-focused organization. So the stuff that happens in the learning and rehearsals is the most important thing to us.
I love this phrase, expert noticing. Could you just talk a little bit more, maybe with a couple specific examples?
It's reflected back to us in ways where, like, a graduating senior will say, or will write their college essay about a rehearsal, an NYC rehearsal, which has happened many times. And they will talk about the kinds of ways they think about music differently than they either did when they were younger, or maybe their colleagues their age do. And they ask questions like, why does a composer make that choice? And what does that choice do emotionally? And how does that affect the listeners? How does it affect me? Asking and answering those types of questions are one example. And the other might be best served by giving an example of sort of the way we do that work. So one of the many ways we do that work is every semester we have a theme. And a typical theme, the way people think about themes it's a concert theme, right? This concert is about birds. And those are lovely and fun concerts, but that's not what we mean by a theme. Usually for us, a theme is a big idea around which we organize our work. Sometimes those are sort of easy to make connections, like music and architecture or music and visual art. And sometimes those are more esoteric, or what we call affective ideas. Like one of our semesters was called Ancestors in Training. So just sort of like think about those words for a second, how they'd make connections. It's sort of thinking about music in a different way. It's not that all the other things that you would expect don't still happen, right? I always say we still learn measure 35 through measure 38, whatever those are. There's still a concert, right? Like all those things happen. It's just the way we sort of go about that is different than a lot of other organizations.
On the one hand, there's an aesthetic education. On the other hand, there's an intellectual curiosity.
I think that is perfectly said. It is both those things.
But it's also this very immersive, powerful musical experience. And I understand you're not necessarily trying to create the next mezzo soprano at the Met,
Right.
although if that happens,
A
that's
professional choral singer, with there are some, but
right, right.
that's not our
That's
goal.
something else. So let's turn our attention to this, the power of singing together. I appreciate what you're talking about these
Yeah.
other things that are gained. I think that's often true. The study of art leads to, it isn't about creating the next masterpiece.
Right.
It's about training your mind and training your spirit. At the same time, these kids are engaged in this very powerful experience of singing together. Talk a little bit about why you think that's important.
I'll just go there right now and say, especially now, in this world and this country we live in that doesn't value the things we're going to say in this 40 minutes, the message being told to everyone is we don't value those things. So I think a couple of things are true. I think the power of what we're doing is even more powerful right now because caring about these things and caring about community and teaching this way is literally an act of resistance. And I feel strongly about that. And I would say that on this podcast, and I would say that in a staff meeting, and I would say that in a rehearsal, and I do. I feel like the thing we do this, so in my example, right, choral music, in some ways very traditional, right? We're a choir, we sing with voice parts, it's that kind of tradition, is about a sense of community. In obvious ways, right? You sing together at the same time, but it's also that idea that what we do together is not a zero sum game, which is mostly what our society teaches, right? But that we can lift each other up at the same time. And you have to lift each other up at the same time to be a successful choir. It requires it. That's what a choir is. And that idea that we would actually care about the people around us and that would help us to be more successful is a very special thing that happens rarely, but it happens in choral singing. And so I care about all of the musical things, right? I'm a music nerd to the core. I want them to sing in tune. I want it to be accurate. I want all those things. I want it to be exciting. But to me, those things are dull and boring unless they are accompanied with a deep sense of emotional connection. And that emotional connection comes because we do this thing called community. And it just so happens that choral music is one of the best places that community can happen. It's not perfect. I'll just like shout it out, right? As a historical thing, it has its problems, but I still feel strongly that the thing we do about singing together is so powerful for all of those reasons.
There are community choruses all over
Yep.
the United States, which are open pretty much sometimes just anybody who shows up who's, vaguely within range of the note.
Yep.
You have a choir, the way I understand it, it is an audition choir. Am I right about that?
It is and it isn't. I'm glad you asked that. So I'll talk about it in detail, but let me just talk about it in less detail first. We feel strongly that anyone ages 7 to 18, those are just arbitrary ages we came up with because that's sort of what we're good at, can sing and is a musician and can develop that skill. And our job is to help them do that. And so we feel really strongly. First of all, we don't audition kids that are age 7, 8, 9, or 10. They join our program. It's called an introductory choir, but it's really just an introduction to Madison Youth Choirs. And kids older than that, we hear them. We stopped calling it an audition probably 15 years ago. It's a voice placement appointment. They come in, we have a sense of where their skills are. We assign them to a choir because our choirs are somewhat by age and somewhat by gender, and that's a whole nother conversation. But like a 7-year-old maybe isn't the best fit with an 18-year-old. We try to put people with their peers. But I would say in the last 10, 15 years, we found a place for every kid that comes in because we really value everyone's gifts. Our shortest rehearsal is an hour, and it goes up from there. So having the skill of being focused for an hour is one skill. It's not the only skill. And so also being enthusiastic and asking great questions and being empathetic and being a good singer and being a good sight reader, like all of those skills are important. And we care about everyone's different skills. So we are a place for everyone to develop those skills together. And we teach that all the way through. I mean, by the time you get to our most advanced ensembles, ideally you are a fairly skilled singer, right? But that didn't just happen magically. And it doesn't only happen for some people. I can think of an example of a singer who just graduated who maybe wasn't the strongest singer or sight reader in the choir, but oh my gosh, could she ask incredibly intelligent questions? And the choir knew, like, when she raised her hand, everyone's like, okay, something smart is about to be said in this room. Everyone be quiet.
In this age where, as you say, this is not exactly mainstream, that it is an act of resistance, I think. Why do kids want to do this? Because sometimes singing, especially once you get past about fourth or fifth grade,
I know.
for boys in particular,
Yep.
is not something that gives you social status.
Right.
Why do you think kids won't want to do this?
Honestly, in some ways, I have no idea because I will just tell you, right, since COVID and since we, quote, reopened, we have exploded in growth. We are 20, 30% larger than we were 5 or 6 years ago. So, in some ways, I have no explanation for that. And on the other hand, I have to assume, like barring another explanation, it's that we offer something that isn't being offered. And I don't think it's just singing. I think it is the way we think about singing and the way we value everyone's voice and encourage community and inquisitiveness. All of those things are not they're not a thing that happens all the time. And I think there's a real thirst for them. And you see it in the kids all of the kids that we serve. And it's interesting that you say that about boys. Just as an aside, because you brought it up and I think it's worth saying, the history of our organization is that it's a gendered organization. It wasn't for boys and girls can't be together. It was that, especially for our NYC community, that we really wanted to lift up girls and who sometimes were ahead of their male peers. And we wanted to sort of instill a culture of maleness that wasn't typical, that wasn't sports oriented, and that was very empathetic and lifting each other up. Since we have changed as a society and started to think about gender in a different way, we have done the same thing. So we don't call it a choir for boys or a choir for girls anymore. We use pronouns. We talk about sopranos and altos, and we have a lot of kids in our choirs who, even though they are still gendered, most of the particular choir is people who use he or they pronouns, and most of our particular choir maybe use she or they. There's still a place for everyone, and kids are sort of fluid in how they come to us. But we still do it for that reason, because we are trying to push against, in a lot of ways, sort of our mainstream culture, especially the way we think about those gendered ideas. That was a lot of answering your question, but I think because of all of those things, it's why we have a lot of boys, a lot of kids who identify as male, because we are something different. And we have found that once the hurdle of, I guess I will try that thing, kids don't leave because, oh, that was lame. They leave because they get busy, right? Things happen, but for the most part, they have a positive experience. We certainly care about that.
I believe in my own work with kids that your word is accurate. There's a thirst for these kinds of experiences. And in particular, I find both around music, but also story.
Yes.
And if they can put down their phones and get engaged, it's like, oh, this feeds some part of me that I didn't even know that I had.
Yeah.
And so you're giving them that opportunity to experience that.
I think that's so wise, especially also, I mean, right, how many times in a conversation can we say since COVID? But those kids that went through that experience when they were younger, they are changed forever. And there is something we are offering that is helping them to move forward and move through the world differently. And they recognize it. I mean, certainly kids will say, oh, I loved when we sang that piece, or I loved when we did that. But they most often recognize the special feeling that it is about being a community singing together. It's not just about that one piece, it's about the thing we are talking about on this podcast.
Come and let our swelling song out.
You are listening to How Can I Keep From Singing? My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guest today is Mike Ross.
Singing from so blithe of heart and mind.
Talk a little bit about your own relationship to singing. I assume you grew up as a singer, a musician, or what?
Oh.
How did you get here?
So it's very funny. My own relationship to singing is late and somewhat complicated and has some baggage to it. It's one of the reasons I love that I get to do this job. And I sort of joke, like, I teach kids how to sing. I was not a singer. I started playing piano when I was 6 years old because I was one of those kids who said to my parents, I want to play the piano. I've been a pianist, forever, and that's my main instrument. I did not sing in a children's choir. I didn't know they existed. Thinking back, I think I liked singing, and I definitely liked singing. I'm Jewish, for those of you that can't see me and notice the obvious, and/or I said spiel earlier, but I'm Jewish, and I remember I enjoyed singing at temple. Like, I enjoyed those community things, but like a choir was not on my radar. And then I got to high school, and I was a pianist, and so the choir director, who I loved, sought me out, and I started playing for the choir, and he recruited me. But even in high school, I liked choir, but I never really felt like I was great at it. And so I went to college, and I thought about being a music teacher. And then it was the thing that made sense because I didn't play a band instrument or an orchestra instrument. And I didn't want to teach piano. So, long story short, it really has been a long process for me. In college, I definitely made a deeper connection with choral singing because of the experience I had. But I was never confident as a singer. I'm probably the most confident as a singer now at age 53. It's not my strength. I'm better than the average 14-year-old. That's just because I've had more years doing it. And I know some things about technique and I know what I don't know, right? Like I certainly am experienced enough voice teacher now to know that I am not the expert in the ways that other teachers are. I just have I would say I'm a better teacher than I am a voice teacher. I'm a better musician than I am a singer. Like all of those things are true. So, long story short, I came to it late, but it's also one of the reasons why I love our organization and I love getting kids involved because I didn't have that. And this is true, right? I can think of a real example. We have a singer in our program who sang with us a year and a half in high school and then stayed connected in college, went to college for music ed, became a teacher, conducts for us now, right? Like has the same sort of trajectory as I did that came to singing late, came to choral singing late, and then thought, oh, really, this is the thing for me.
There's probably a certain advantage coming to it late. And one of the things that is a frequent topic of discussion in here is thinking about how adults in particular have been traumatized by being told they shouldn't sing.
Yes.
And how many people carry that baggage. You're certainly addressing that right from the beginning. I don't think your kids are going to come out with that.
No, I mean, we certainly hope not, because our goal is to value everybody's voice. But I certainly, I know that trauma. I mean, I was not one of those kids that had that like direct experience of a music teacher saying that to me. But I was so insecure about my voice, and still am, for so long that I absolutely understand that deeply. And I truly believe it when I say anyone can be a singer, anyone can be a musician. That doesn't mean, like you said earlier, it doesn't mean everyone is a soloist at the Met or everyone is a published composer. There's a spectrum of things, right? But music and singing is available to everyone, and it should always be.
There's a widespread coalition or group of youth choirs around the country. I don't know much about it. I'm sure you're part of an association of some kind, and are there times when people get together or?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't like a youth choir association. There are music ed associations. There are choral organizations. There are a lot of youth choirs in this country. There's certainly a lot in the world. A European youth choir tends to go up to like age 25. So what we call in the U.S., we call them youth choirs. Sometimes they're called children's choirs. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? This is the tradition of singing in the church in Europe. And so there are a lot in the country. We are certainly connected with some of them and have wonderful colleagues around the country. And we will meet with them or visit from time to time. We tour as an organization, and we have gone to Scotland every 2 years for years and years. And now we have friends in the choral world and the youth choral world in Scotland. We have found that the way we think about singing is still somewhat unique, even though all those other organizations are wonderful and they care about kids and they sing beautifully. Some of them are larger and more successful organizations, and their kids sing at a higher level, right? That is true. But we have found sort of what we do is different. But we love that there are all these great organizations that care about kids.
You talk about this tension between, skill and a more holistic approach, and you wonder what that does to attendance in other choirs in the long run. If skill becomes the dividing line, certain people don't make it, and versus we want everybody to have this experience.
Right. I think that's fair, and I think other choirs, everybody makes a different decision. We decided 18 to 19 years ago that we cared more about being a place for all kids to sing. It looks like kids with a wide range of abilities and a wide range of challenges. Kids on the spectrum, kids with other disabilities, kids, all sorts of kids, all kids come to us. And that is sometimes a challenge, right? You have to be a thoughtful teacher and find ways to engage everybody. But we are committed to that. And we really feel like you can have it both ways. I say this with love. We're not going to be Chicago Children's Choir, which is an incredible organization and does great work, and frankly is like a huge deal in the area of race and anti-racism. Like they're an incredible organization. Their top group sings at a very high level and it's very selective. We're never going to be that group because we're never selective in that way. Plus, we don't live in Chicago, and we're okay. We're fine with it. This is what we want to do. We still get great experiences. Our kids sing with the symphony. We sing our own concerts. Like we have great experiences. We just decided that that thing is more important to us.
One of the things that interests me about singing together are those goosebump moments, if you want to call it,
Oh, yeah.
where there's just this blending and coalescing. Some people have never experienced that.
I know.
People who have,
I know.
I know,
Right? Come on, we got to get you to have that experience.
people will sing, happy birthday, or they sing, take me out to the ball game. But this opportunity to feel what it's like to be immersed, I think incredibly powerful. There are certain times, as with any artistic experience, when it just hits. You can't program it necessarily, but when it does happen, everybody looks around the room and says, wow. I'm sure your kids have the opportunity to do that.
Those are the moments, right? And my favorite time is when those don't happen in a concert, where I can look around the room and say, do you understand what just happened? Do I hope that happens at the concert? Sure, of course I do. But if it doesn't, we always have this moment, right? Like this is the thing we can remember. And you are right to say, like, that is one of the things that keeps kids going is those experiences. And it's a million different factors, where it happened, what they were thinking about. And some of it can be intentionally planned, like a thoughtful discussion or interrogation of what the composer is doing and what's going on in the text can lead to those moments, right? It's not guaranteed by any stretch, but right, it can lead to those types of moments. And sometimes they just happen because two notes are really just so perfectly in tune, and you just feel that. Or this is my favorite, the first time kids hear any sort of overtone in the room and they understand that we created that thing, like that just blows their mind. Like that exists, right? And then you feel bad. Like there's like four kids, like I don't hear it. I said, you will hear it, I promise. It's just a skill to practice like any other skill.
When you think about repertoire, I know you and the other directors, conductors are choosing based on theme and based on personal preference. What kinds of things come into your consideration as you're thinking about repertoire, both for sort of the highly skilled group like you're with, but also for the more beginning?
So I'll say as an organization, every conductor picks their own rep, but within the sort of idea of what we do. But what I'm going to say is the way we all think about repertoire. It's one of the hardest things we do. Is the thing that almost matters the most, or matters equally to everything else, because it's our time together. We only see kids once a week for an hour or 2 hours. We might only sing 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of music because we want to sort of interrogate them deeply. So we want to choose the very best. And I'm going to say best, not in the like everything is judged equally, but the very best example of whatever particular style or genre. If it's a piece of South African choral music or a piece by Bach or a gospel piece or this pop melody arranged because it's such a good composition, Mendelssohn or a contemporary choral piece, right? Whatever it is, we want it to be the best example of that thing, and we want it to have the most stuff in it to discover. We think a lot about the difference between popular music as an art form and sort of not that. And we don't pit them against each other. Things exist for different purposes. And so we are just more interested in the thing that existed to make someone think or create some sort of art. And that's not to say that, like, I have very eclectic musical tastes. I might not do an arrangement of my favorite pop song from the 90s. It's not a judgment. It's just that's not a thing that fits the thing we are doing. It sometimes involves some value. When I say best, I know for some people it makes them shudder. Like I'm the decider of that. That's not what we mean. We mean the thing that most successfully does the work we are trying to do.
Yeah, you have a wider rubric for thinking about that.
Right.
It's just personal preference or popularity or whatever. So, Mike, what lies ahead? You've been overseeing and part of creating this very successful and powerful experience and opportunity for kids. Where does it lead?
I mean, for us as an organization, we're in our year of strategic planning, and so that's one of the things we are thinking about. What kind of organization will we be in the future? What kinds of experiences can we offer for kids that maybe don't require them to come once a week for 18 weeks? And what does that look like? And who are our teachers in the future? And who are the future music educators? And can we be part of that ecosystem to really develop people who start to think about music in different ways? We care about things like how our organization is financially and all those, and those things are important. we're doing well, but we want to continue to do well. So that's sort of where we are. Like, we're sort of dreaming. What could that look like? Could it look like there are other music culture bearers in town that maybe don't have a traditional choral background, but they kind of do X or Y, or whatever that is? Or there's a choir that's focused on Z that you met for 6 weeks on a Saturday morning, right? Like, all of those types of things we could be involved in, certainly. For me personally, this is my 22nd year as artistic director. My wife's going to retire in a few years. I could see doing this until I'm 75. I also could see retiring. But to that end, even when I think about an organization, I hope that the next artistic director of this organization is not a middle-aged white guy. That is very, very important to me. But that's easy to say. Do we have 48 more hours to talk about this? There's a lot to unpack there, but we also want to be part of that conversation. How can we make sure that we are really a place for all kids, and what does that mean in terms of who is leading the organization? That's a lot of rambling, like I like to ramble about the future, and not a lot of specifics, but we're in that dreaming stage. We want to do well what we do well, and we want to lift up other organizations that do things well. We don't have to be the organization that does everything, because other organizations teach kids really well, and we don't need to be in their business. We should focus on the thing that we do.
Mike, I really appreciate this vision that you have around singing and this experience for children. Thank you so much for talking with me.
It's my pleasure. Anytime. Happy to talk about all these things.
My guest today has been Mike Ross, the artistic director of the Madison Youth Choir. I'll put some information in the notes about the organization, the website, and so on. But Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to How Can I Keep From Singing, a production of Common Arts. My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guest today was Mike Ross of the Madison Youth Choirs.